We'll get started. So I'm Lori. I teach at Temple. I teach criminal justice. Morris? You're muted.
I'm Morris Jenkins. I teach at Lewis University in the Justice Law and Public Safety Studies program outside of Chicago.
Okay, great. Thank you. Erin?
Hi, I'm Erin McCloskey. I teach at Vassar College and I'm in the education department.
Great, thank you. Annie?
Sorry about my camera, it's just on the blink. My name's Annie Rohde-Wright. I teach at Siena College and I run the criminal justice studies program, and I teach restorative justice too.
Great, thanks. Molly?
Molly Shanley, and I'm an emerita professor from Vassar, and I taught political theory and gender studies.
Cool, okay. Lynn?
Hi, Lori. It's been many years, and to the group, I did not realize this was a sign-in where we were all going to be on camera. It's been so many years since I trained. I teach at the University of Southern California, and I met Lori. Am I on? I met Lori as director of the Institute for Ethics at USC, where we started a project and a partnership with you all. Since then, I am now teaching at the medical school. I teach medical narratives, specifically global women's narratives in medicine and in health, and have been speaking with the administration at the medical school about if it's possible to bring some prison education into our program and our courses. And so I'm wide open, and it's been a while, but I thank you for having me to this meeting today.
Okay, welcome. Good to see you. Jackie?
Okay, so I am a retired biology professor from Temple. I never taught inside when I was at Temple, but I moved to Yale. I'm at Yale and I've taught 3 semesters at McDougall Walker, which is a maximum security prison, and I taught biology and neuroscience until I was terminated as a volunteer. But I received funding from the National Science Foundation for a summer program for formerly incarcerated students. And we're just getting it underway. We have 6 formerly incarcerated students, 3 from California, 1 from Boston College, 1 from a community college here. And along the way of recruiting, I met so many faculty who were interested in teaching inside. And I decided that I would try to help them understand a little bit more about Inside Out. So that's why I'm here.
Fabulous. Okay. It's good to see you again, Jackie. Sarah?
Hi, everyone. Sorry to be off camera, but I'm in transit. I'm Sarah Shannon. I'm at the University of Georgia. I'm a associate professor of sociology and also director of the criminal justice studies program. I was trained in 2016 and have been teaching at the local jail here since 2017.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. It would be nice to say when you were trained, if you can remember, and you know, kind of where you've been teaching. Ed?
Hi all, Ed Wiltsey from Rochester, New York, Nazareth University. I teach English and Media Studies, and I believe I did the IO training in about 2006.
Okay. Angela?
Hi, I am at Penn State Brandywine, which is just outside of Philadelphia, and I'm a communication studies professor. I did the training in 21, and I teach a public speaking class inside the county jail since 22.
Great. Good to see you. Richard, long time no see.
Yeah, sorry, we were just on another meeting together. My name is Richard Frankel from Drexel University. I'm at the law school, and I teach a law and criminal justice course. I've only taught the course twice. I did my training probably in 2018. And this will be my 3rd time. It's half law. The outside students are law students in this course.
Great. Okay. Nakia?
Hi, Lori and everyone. Sorry to be off camera. I believe I completed the course in 2021 as an assistant to my soror, Ella Terrain, RIP. I am the executive director of Abolitionist Sanctuary and also a professor at University of Kansas in the Religious Studies Department, based here in California, where I taught in the California Institute for Women with Pomona College and also Cook County Jail in Chicago.
Okay. Good to see you. Thank you. Shoshana?
Hello, my name is Shoshana Lucas. I am a professor at Cal Lutheran University in the Criminology and Criminal Justice Department, and I have taught Inside Out. I got trained in 2016, and I've taught Inside Out at a jail a few times, and then a day reporting center, and I'm teaching it at a detention center with 18 to 25-year-olds coming up. So I'm prepping for that right now.
Okay. All right, I'm starting to lose track now. Let's see. Oh, Rhea.
Hi, I said long time no see. I know. How are you, Lauren? Rhea Ballard-Thor, Dean of Libraries at the University of Illinois, Chicago. I was trained Inside Out in 2017. I teach advanced legal research at the law school and take law students. I've taught I started at the DC jail, and now that I'm in Chicago, I teach at the Cook County Jail.
Okay. Jenna.
Perfect follow-up. Hi, I'm Jenna Basanen. I'm a PhD student in criminology at University of Illinois, Chicago. I am Rhea's teaching assistant for her law school class, and I've also done various workshops in the women's division at Cook County Jail.
All right, great. Great to have you here. Eloise?
Hi, I'm Eloise. I'm a professor of French at Butler University, Indianapolis, Indiana. I received the training last summer, 2023. And right now, Butler and myself, we are working on offering our first Inside Out course in the fall. So we're in the middle of it at the women's prison, and it's going to be exciting.
Great. Sue?
Hi. I'm Sue Pierce. Did you mean me, Laurie? Sue Pierce?
Sorry?
You mean me? Like there was
Yes,
another
yes,
Sue,
Pierce,
was there?
yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry, my camera's off, but I'm having some difficulties. But I teach at Arcadia University, which is a small private university right outside of Philadelphia, PA. I got trained in 2011, and I mostly taught in Philadelphia County jails.
Okay. Randall? Hello. Oh.
Here we go. I can find my Zoom controls. My name is Randall Gromitstein. I teach criminal justice at Fitchburg State University in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. I think I'm one of Laurie's earliest grads. I'm the class of 2005. And I have never actually succeeded in setting up an Inside Out program because I dilly-dallied, and because then the funding changed recently, and all the privates in Massachusetts got in there ahead of me. So I'm trying to set up a program right now with a county jail, which is proving to be difficult. Anyway.
Glad that you're here.
Me too.
Stephen?
Sorry about that. I was paying attention, I promise. Steve Sims, I'm at Bridgewater State, so Randall, I'm just south of you. I did my training in 2016, I believe. I've taught at a medium security prison before COVID and post-COVID. I've been teaching at Plymouth County at the jail. So Randall, if you have any questions, I can help you strategize. Dealing with carceral institutions in Massachusetts is interesting. I'll leave it at that. I'm in a criminal justice department at Bridgewater State.
Great. Okay. Good to see you. Your beard has gotten much longer than I remember.
Longer and grayer.
Oh, well, yeah, there's that. Eric.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Kyle. I'm at the University of Central Oklahoma. I took the Inside Out trainers course last summer. I'll be teaching my first Inside Out class this coming fall at a medium security men's correctional facility on peace building. I'm just happy to be here.
Okay, welcome. Jennifer?
Hi, I'm really pleased I tuned in at the 11th hour because I'm a professor of sociology out in Western Massachusetts, right? So I've got two colleagues who are present that work in the same state higher ed system as myself. So I'm at Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts, and I did the training in, I think it was fall of 21, I want to say. And I'm literally just getting around to proposing administrative support to begin Inside Out at Berkshire House of Corrections, which we have a good partnership with the jail. What we don't have is good concrete sustained support from the administrators of our college. So I'm trying to literally write a report that prioritizes this. So I'm really happy to be here and hear from folks. So
Yes, and I'm sure that there will be a lot of input here that will be very helpful.
Yep, thank you.
And Betsy, hello. No, you're muted, Betsy.
Oh, I just dropped in at the last minute, for which I apologize. I did the training in 2009, and I've taught in a couple of the Philadelphia jails, CFCF and PIC, and at one point Riverside, which was a women's jail. I'm officially retired from the university, so I don't know whether I'll teach any more Inside Out courses, but I really wanted to hear this conversation. So that's why I tuned in. And I might have something to say. I don't know, but I want to hear
Oh,
it.
I'm sure you will. And of course you will teach more Inside Out courses. Come on, Betsy.
Well, I'm actually one of a group of 3 presenters at a conference in Chicago, a Jesuit conference about prison education. Well, part of it's about prison education this July. So that's one of my motivations of listening to what other people have to say about this right now.
All right, welcome. Now, did I miss anybody? Oh, Tara, sorry.
No problem. I'm Tara Gilligan. I teach at Lafayette College in Easton, Pennsylvania, and I teach in our county jail, Northampton County Jail. I teach on a women's unit, and I teach women's gender and sexuality study courses. Thank you.
Okay. And Anika.
Hi, Anika Anderson. I'm the department chair of sociology, also an associate professor of sociology, and I teach criminology and crime assistance and reentry courses. I just haven't taught it yet in Inside Out course, and I was a part of the cohort in 2023.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. And so Molly and Erin and Ed are going to take us on this journey. So all yours.
Okay, I'm Molly Shanley, and I've just lost on my screen due to my technological incompetence the things I was going to say. But we thought that the people who would be on the Zoom would have, as we did, so this is the projection of autobiographies, come from prison teaching and taken up jail teaching through the Inside Out program. And so one of the things that we wanted to, but now I discover that so many of you have actually taught in jail, so that doesn't need a lot of explication. But I will, just since there are people from a number of places, say that one of the things that we find, that what all of us found, that Ed and Erin and I found it important about the teaching in jails, was that unlike our teaching in prison, which I valued enormously, I taught in a medium security women's prison here in New York State. The jail is located in the community that we live in. And that has had great meaning both for us I'll speak for myself, for me as a professor, and for the inside and the outside students who then can draw on their common experience of the Mid-Hudson Valley and of Poughkeepsie, New York. It also, that has benefits for the inside students and the outside students as well. For the inside students, it means that there can be some connection between their contact with the people who go into the jail as professors to connect through them to reentry programs. And Erin will speak about that. She's been very involved in both the jail and the reentry programs. For the students, my students who I would take into the jail, there is then also the possibility for internships, for thinking about, oh, these are other things that I might do here in my community, a dimension that was not available to them and when they worked when they went into Taconic. Both of these are enormously valuable. It's not one that's more than the other, but that they're different in that respect. And so we have valued that and the connection to the community and to reentry programs. The other thing is that we found that the pedagogy and the challenges of teaching in the jail were different from those in the prison setting. One is that one of the most important is that the length of stay for many of the people, at least in our county jail, is quite short. It may be it may be 6 weeks, it may be a couple of months. Some people are serving out a term, which can be up to 18 months, but there are not many of those. And so there's had to be a pedagogical modification for how do you construct a course that can be taken by people who can complete a semester, but also is valuable to people who cannot. How do you think about the course materials, and also how do you think about evaluations and what kinds of credit you can give? Because for Vassar College, the doing of the inside out gives every student in the class college credit. But we've modified that as we've found that we have students that in the jail that can't finish a semester. Another real difference that I discovered in the classrooms in the prison and in the jail were that in the Dutchess County Jail, I would have people in the class who were still traumatized by the arrest, by the incarceration that had followed from it. Whereas in Taconic, I had women who had been incarcerated for several years, had taken other college courses, knew precisely the terms of their sentence. In the jail, people were recently off of the streets, sometimes were pretrial, did not know when they would be released. We're still working out questions of custody, who was going to take care of their children while they were incarcerated. So a much more volatile and unsettled population than I had found was the case in prison. And again, that's just something to be conscious of. That's something that I had to adjust my pedagogy and my construction of a curriculum to meet. So those would be kinds of differences. Again, I had not expected so many of you would have experience in jail teaching. I think that's terrific. And I'm going to stop talking so that we can have the conversation. I'm going to turn it over to Erin and Ed to reflect upon their experiences and just set up maybe some kinds of areas of conversation for us.
Ed, I'll go next if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. Erin McCloskey. Molly explained a little bit about where we've been teaching in facilities in Poughkeepsie, New York, which is where Vassar College is located. It took us a long time to get into our local jail, and basically Molly was the person who paved the way by volunteering there for a number of years before we were ever able to start a college course there. And through that volunteer service, Molly was able to meet the administrators of the jail, to meet the officers in the jail, the people who were running different programs in the jail. And it was that way we were able to then connect our dean of the faculty to those people through Molly and start a series of meetings to talk about how we could run an inside out class in the jail. At first, the administrators were very uninterested in the prospect, but through multiple meetings, we were able to explain how, it worked in a prison, how it was going to be safe for everyone involved. And then they greenlit it and we were ready to go. And then COVID happened and the whole thing just stopped. And so rather than not teach the course, I reached out to a reentry organization in Poughkeepsie and asked them if they would be interested in hosting a college course that would be online. We would provide the computers for the students from the reentry organization, and we started that way. And now I'm lucky enough to be able to teach both of those classes, both in the jail and also keep the course with the reentry organization, which has made me connected to the community in ways I never imagined by being in both of those places. So yeah, I'm super excited for this conversation. I'm excited to learn from you and the ways that you manage curriculum in jails. And so with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Ed.
Thanks, Erin and Molly. And I'm in Rochester, New York, so not in downstate Poughkeepsie, but in fact upstate. And I think it's significant that the vocabulary for mass incarceration involved going upstate as a phrase to refer to going to prison back when most of the folks going to prison in New York State were coming from the New York City area and going to prison facilities near where I live or in the even further northern reaches of New York State. One of the quick sort of victories to note in New York State is that we're in an era of significant decarceration. The overall prison population of New York State has gone down by more than half since 2008. And that's a remarkable victory by activists whom I respect. And with respect to jails, the passage of the cash bail law has meant that the jail population in New York State has dropped by about a third. Unfortunately, it's rebounded a bit, so that it was more than a third initially, and now that with the bail law and some retrenchment and conservative pushback against the loss of the use of cash bail as a tool of carceral control in New York State, we're seeing numbers go up in county jails again over the past 2 years. So this is all geography and demographics of mass incarceration more broadly. My remit here is to talk about the programs that I've run, starting with a project at our county jail that I launched in 2001, long before I'd learned about Lori's work in Philadelphia. That involves students in a class on the literature of crime and punishment in the USA, collaborating in a project that is referred to at the jail as a book club and on my campus as an academic project. And I find that sort of fuzzy vocabulary actually quite useful for thinking about how people come together to talk about books and wind up talking about things that are equally significant in their lives that relate to the books. And so, yeah, in 2001, I launched this collaboration between students in the class and students at the county jail, and whom we provide with the books using a campus grant for service learning. And then in 2008, I found out that I had reinvented a wheel that was busy spinning in Philadelphia. So I went off and did the training and added a lot of rich material from that training into the work that I've been doing. And that project has run pretty much unchanged since 2001 with the additions. But it's now old enough to buy a beer in New York State. It reached 21 years old last year. Along with that, I've since added more significant work, prison teaching with colleagues at University of Rochester across town. We run 3 different associate's degree programs and a bachelor's degree program at local prisons. As a result of that work, I've been able to teach 2 sections of what New York Department of Corrections insists on calling combined classes. They don't like inside out as a label attached to anything that happens in New York State because it suggests that someone else might have some say over what happens in the New York State prisons, and they don't like that in any form. So I have taught 2 sections of combined classes. Both were affected by COVID. And so I can talk more about those if there's interest here, but I think that's not at the jail. That's in a prison where we have our students. As Molly was saying, the churn at the jail is such that it's very hard to have a group of people together for 15 weeks. Unfortunately, at the prisons, it's much easier to have people who are there for many more weeks than that. I have taught those 2 sections. And then more recently, I've launched a collaboration with some incarcerated students and their teacher in Colorado, and they meet with my students over Zoom for a digital version of what we have for 20 years called the Jail Project. That has added a new dimension to the kind of book club style collaboration with people who are incarcerated. And the group in Colorado has extraordinary ability to hop on a Zoom from their classroom at the prison. It's a maximum security facility, and talk with a bunch of students in New York State with very little oversight, which is quite remarkable and has proved to be a very productive venue, both for those incarcerated students and for the free world students on my campus who look forward to Zooming with them every week. So that's my history in this work. I guess from there, Erin and Molly, we want to open it up for a more conversational. So I guess if there are folks with questions or comments, maybe you could just unmute and shout. Go ahead, Richard.
Sorry. I'm curious if I've only taught in a jail on the 2 occasions, and there was a significant amount of, I don't know what the word is, churn, or right, the number of inside students at the beginning of the course was much higher than at the end of the course. And I was at the beginning of the course, I tried to match equal numbers of inside students and outside students as enrolled. And I was wondering if you recommend or have thoughts about maybe starting, if I had 15 outside students, starting with 20 inside students, or sort of adjusting for that, expected melt.
I would say, oh, go ahead, Molly.
No,
Go.
you go in, Erin.
I was just going to say, in my class at the jail, the students have a choice of if they want to get credit for it or not. And if they decide that they want to earn college credit, they will then meet with me when they're no longer in the Dutchess County Jail, and we'll hold the rest of the classes outside. Typically, me and a few other students that are on-campus students that are willing to kind of do the class twice. But I continually enroll throughout the semester. And so the design of the syllabus had to be such that anyone could jump in at any time and sort of be with the group and take off. The class is based on youth justice. And so things don't necessarily follow, you don't have to read last week's work to dive into the following week's work.
I could add to that, Richard. That was one of my biggest concerns, was the turnover that was going to happen when I started teaching in the jail, especially teaching a communication class that's reliant on them working together. The first speech in my class is actually a partner speech where an inside and outside student are paired and interview each other, and then they give a speech on the other person. So I start each semester with 11 inside students and 10 outside students. I only up it by 1. And that's because I have a student TA in the class. And so my student TA actually agrees to partner with the 11th incarcerated student and give the speech on him. I just didn't want to have 2 incarcerated people have to get paired up with each other and not have the same experience as everyone else who's paired up with someone from the different group. The one thing that I will say that the reason my class has been overwhelmingly successful is because of my jail administrator. She's literally a superstar. And so when she's culling the list together of the inside students who I actually go to the jail and interview, I interview about 15 to 20 guys, and then I pick the 11. The list of guys that she gives me are all guys who are sentenced with release dates after my class ends. So that's like the first thing that they do to try and make it as good for me as possible. And so the list that she gives me actually has all their names and their release date on it. So that's never foolproof either. We've lost someone before from early release. We had a guy get transferred to state prison because they extended his sentence in the middle of him, our time in the class. But each class I've gotten better at who we've lost. The first year was abysmal. I started with 11 and we were down to 4 inside guys for the closing ceremony. But then the next year, I finished with 9 of the 11. So it's getting better. I can say that much.
I think it's so cool. Sorry, go ahead, Lori.
A quick question. Do you add people throughout the semester?
That part I do not, because it is a skills-based class. if they were to come in the middle, they will not have learned anything that I've already taught about giving speeches, for example, like how to do an introduction and conclusion. So who I start with is who I have.
I was just going to add that I think it's so cool that you do oral comm in a carceral setting. When I teach first year writing to class, I've not done it as combined class, but just to classes of incarcerated women and men. It's always so clear to me how the rich oral culture of a prison yard translates into the ability to make arguments. And so I make a big point of sort of teaching them that this is a skill they already have, right? And it just needs to be militated in different ways to be academically successful. So I bet that's a blast to teach.
Well, Lori knows it's the thing that I was the most worried about, because I could tell right away that inside out classes were meant to be like intense discussion oriented classes. And mine's very like, I've taught you this skill, now get up and perform this skill. And I just had no idea how in the world that was going to work in an inside out formula. And I don't know about all of your schools, but public speaking is required for every Penn State student, but it's the one that they dread the most. And what was interesting for me was that when the inside guys found out that was the class, most of them in their interview told me that is what they were the most excited about, why they applied for my course, because they wanted to learn how to give speeches and be able to present better. And so I sort of use that as a needle to the Penn State students of like, you all are dreading this course, but the inside guys are really pumped about it. So like, step up your game.
But I'm doing this comment for purposes of showing this to the jail administrator and our prison educator here at Lewis University. So I got a quick question, and I got a few ideas from you as well. Would you suggest have an accelerated course in the jail as opposed to like a 16-week course? We have 8-week courses here, and we also have 1-credit workshops. Do you see some possibilities revolving around that?
Well, just very quickly, and Erin is the one who's actually doing the teaching now, but we did some trial courses before they became institutionalized. And there isn't, I mean, I think every institution has different ways of giving credits, but you can at Vassar do a half semester course. So that's 6 weeks. And that would be one way of dealing with this problem of this very rapid turnover. That is, you really would probably be able to, then these other thoughts of a workshop or that carries a credit. We don't have that, but other places might. I think that's another way of, Erin's way of some people take it for credit, some people don't take it for credit, is one way of dealing with this exiting unexpectedly. And another way is she's very generous to do this. Okay, you can finish the course on the outside. That is phenomenal, but that's because Poughkeepsie is not a very large place, and therefore I suppose that she can do that. I still think it's very generous. And another is, you know, to do the credit non-credit or to move it down to 6 weeks.
Hi, this is Shoshana Lucas, if I can add. I used to teach at Lewis University about, I guess, 19 years ago. So I'm familiar with their system. The 1-credit option is great. I go in and I teach workshops, and it has an inside out, just training workshops, skill-based workshops. And at least those who can't take the 16-week or the 18-week course, or they get a chance to engage, which is great for them. So if you can get those 1-credit workshops in the jail, I think that'd be great. And then like what was mentioned before is if you can have the personnel at the jail give you that population that has a sentence date after you that are going to be there for 16 weeks or even the 8 weeks. If you can get that date, then that gives you a solid population that will be able to take the class. And even though I've gotten those, their release date is after the 16 weeks, sometimes a opportunity comes up for them to work with the fire department or something like that. So for me, I've had a retention rate, sometimes ending with only 5 students in the jail, but the initial date is after my class ends. So if you can get those, that'd be key. And then either 8 or 6 weeks, whatever you think is best, but whatever you can get the largest population, I would suggest.
And Sarah, I saw you had a hand up too, so I wanted to make sure.
I did. Sorry. I was just going to add about the condensing the course into a shorter period of time. I do mine in a half semester.
And is your attendance pretty consistent?
It helps, but I still also continuously enroll students to be able to keep a relatively even number.
Sarah, when you do half a semester, this is Lori, do you do it once a week or twice a week?
I go twice a week for 2.5 hours, so it is an intense 8 weeks, especially for the outside students, but we make it happen.
And how close is your institution from the school?
10 minutes, which is the other benefit of having it in the local jail. If I had to go farther afield, that would make it impossible.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Looks like Tara's waiting to speak.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering if one of you could go back to talking a little bit about what you do to keep the weeks separate from one another, because this is what I do as well. I teach in a county jail. I teach on a women's unit, which is much less populated than the men's unit, and that by itself is probably the biggest factor for why I have so much churn through the semester. I maybe have 2 or 3 students who are there for the entire semester, and everybody else I'm filling in, right? So I'm constantly recruiting, and I design my class so that every unit is a module that can be separate from the others. And it has worked, but I'm also really curious to hear how you do that, since it sounds like it's a similar kind of approach.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I also teach in the women's section of the jail, where there are less women than men, obviously, but there's zero programming. And so when we met with the administrators, that was really what they were asking for, that we knew that we could have a consistency with the men in the jail. We knew it was going to be a little bit more come and go with the women in the jail. So I teach about sort of in a roundabout way how our pathways through school in combination with our different kinds of communities and families paves the way for different sort of pathways through the world. And part of what the students do is they do a lot of storytelling in the class. So they have weekly response papers where they're telling stories about what it was like to be in kindergarten. Who did you notice who was sent outside the classroom? What was the teacher, did you notice the teacher had, certain students that they looked on favorably? Why do you think that is? And then we talk about, the highest group that is expelled from school are 4th graders. Why is that? Why are 4th graders continually expelled from school? And then we'll move on to junior high. And so if you missed that beginning section and you didn't talk about kindergartners or preschool kids, you can still be thinking about your own experiences in junior high and then connecting that to whatever article we're reading about. It could be discipline, it could be tracking, it could be LGBTQ plus issues in schools. Happy to share the syllabus too, if you want to say it.
You want to just put that in the chat?
I have a question that's about 2 of the sort of central principles that I absorbed in my Inside Out training many years ago. One has to do with the importance of using first names only, and the other has to do with the idea that Inside Out is a project that doesn't invite future relationships among the participants. And both of those things are complicated by the presence of your students in a facility where the people are only there for a short time, and they're very likely to encounter their group mates on the outside once people get free. And so while I do maintain those concepts as concepts, I'm also very aware that my students are going to run into each other at Wegmans. So the local jail sort of raises a different set of questions about Inside Out and those kinds of boundaries than a prison does.
I'm so glad you brought
I
that
want
up.
to add that depends on the local jail where it is. In the city of Philadelphia, the 2 big jails in which I have taught are both very large, and they're not in the part of the city that's anywhere near my university. And the chances of the incarcerated people in the jails ever meeting up with my students by accident is small. But the biggest thing I wanted to say about those jails is, and I'm not sure if this is still true because it's been a couple of years, But as far as how long they're there, many of them that I have taught or met have been there much longer than 2 years. We had one man who was there for 5 years waiting trial for homicide. And his fellow inside people all believed that he was in fact innocent, which I tend to trust when your colleagues believe that, because they usually don't. But we've had people who hadn't had bail set yet. They'd been there a year. You know, this is Philadelphia. So those problems are major, but it does mean that it's more possible to count on somebody being there for a long time, often interrupted by a cell block lockdown or somebody being in the hole for something that they didn't deserve to be in the hole for, that kind of thing. But as far as getting out, finishing, that's not common in my experience in the Philadelphia jails. I'm not recommending that, by the way, but you know, the civil rights of these people are not exactly observed, I'd say. Lori can certainly comment on that, and maybe it's improved since the last time I was there. I would love to think so.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Ed, because one thing I've struggled with is my students don't run into each other physically, but after the class is over and the inside students are released, they have looked for each other on Instagram or found each other on Instagram. And then, you know, I'm getting texts from brand new one Penn State students saying like, so-and-so from our class is asked to follow me on Instagram. Like, is it okay, etc. And that's one that I've always been uncertain about whether what I'm telling them is actually what Lori would say is the proper policy. I mean, my reaction to that personally is you're both adults now that are out in the world. And so if you want to be in touch with each other, you get to make that decision. Like George Hill facility no longer gets to tell so-and-so what they can and can't do. You're both over 18. And if so-and-so's found you on Instagram and you want to maintain that connection or be connected to them on Instagram, I don't see any reason why I have the authority to tell you no either. They're outside in the world now. They're a regular citizen on Instagram. So that's what I've always said. Maybe I'm breaking a rule, but Lori's nodding in a way that lets me know I'm not in trouble.
Well, no, that was not what my nod meant. No, I'm
Oh,
kidding.
Maybe I am in trouble.
This is no. This is always has always been the most difficult part of this program for sure. So I'll tell you one situation that we ran into. I was teaching at a particular, I'm just going to leave it very general, but I taught at a particular facility recently. And two people who didn't actually meet through an Inside Out class, but they were both connected to Inside Out. And they were both quite adult. The guy was released, and the two of them connected and ended up getting married. And that's absolutely their prerogative. What rolled down from that was that the security staff was staring at us through the entire semester, through the window, to be sure that nothing was happening, even though I explained to them that they had not been students, etc. This is kind of what happens. So I get, and you probably, some of you have heard me say this before, there's the ideal and the real. The ideal is that we don't have to worry about any of that at all. And the reality is that there are repercussions of things. So for sure, people are adults. Absolutely. I think it's important. It's complicated because in that setting, the relationships are kind of a particular kind of relationship, which wouldn't necessarily continue once outside the setting. I'm not saying this well, but I think people expect that kind of almost feeling of intimacy that can happen in the classroom would continue on the outside. And maybe that's what folks are looking for. And the reality of life is that it generally doesn't go that way. So I think it's important to communicate with students, both inside and outside students, just to be careful about that. That's not, I know, a great answer. One of the main things, not main, I should say one of the issues is that we want to always be able to have access to the institutions. And this is the sort of thing that jeopardizes, just like the example that I gave you, jeopardizes or calls into question our relationship and what we're going in for. Because there's lots of assumptions floating around that these outside people are coming in, who are mostly, by the way, young women, you know, for lots of reasons. One reason of which, I've never heard anybody say this, but I'm imagining, you know, to hook up. And so what we want to do is not feed that assumption, if possible. All right, so I just said a whole lot of stuff. Thoughts, questions, perspectives?
If I can jump in, I'll just say one of the things that this whole concern has really done for me is really drive home the importance of the recruitment process and the application and the interviews that I have with the outside students in particular, because I really don't get hardly any contact with the inside students before they're in my class. So I know it's not possible to foresee or prevent, you know, any of these kinds of things from occurring fully, but I really have found over time that choosing outside students that you can feel like you can trust and feel like are at the right place for this kind of course goes a long way. Because I have had outside students report to me about breaches of the rules in class and out of class, you know, over time. And I've just always been really grateful for that sense that I think they do have the outside students in particular carry for not wanting this program to come to an end for themselves or for future students. So I really lean on that recruitment process as being really key to trying our best to prevent some of those negative situations from happening.
Yeah, I second that, Sarah. And I would add that among the inside students, once we start getting to know them, there's a great deal of kind of checking of what's okay and what's not okay, because they too have everything to gain by allowing the program to persevere. And so I've many times watched an incarcerated person tell another incarcerated person to tone it down, or to, you know, quiet down, or to not pass that note, or whatever it may be, because they know how fragile any good thing happening in the carceral facility is.
Does anybody else want to weigh in on this issue?
Any other issues or questions people have? Topics that we didn't talk about yet? Randall?
I wonder if I could raise this one, which is that we started by talking to folks who were in basically a day reporting program. And they seemed very interested by the idea of the Inside Out course, but they had heard about the Pell Grant renewals. And they wanted to know that if there was any way their students could get college credit. I'm wondering if anybody else has run into this issue.
Yeah, it is, you know, on the minds of people who are building college and prison programs and college and jail programs across the country. The length of stay issue and the ability to create a continuity of classes is really complicated in this instance. I know of a program, it's actually just south of Molly and Erin in Westchester County, where the Westchester County Jail has successfully used Second Chance Pell, the predecessor to the current Pell expansion, to support college classes there. There are also real questions about the inviting incarcerated students to use up their available Pell semesters in situations where they're not really able to do meaningful college programs. And so that there's an ethics question at stake there, I think, as well as a practical one. That's pretty much all I've got on it, Randall.
That's it was our financial aid folks who raised the ethical issue that you just mentioned. So thank you for addressing that, Ed. So people have, in other words, have succeeded in persuading people of the value of the inside out model, despite the lack of college credits.
Actually, to be clear, I don't think the Westchester program I was mentioning uses inside out. And as I said, nowhere in New York State does they use it under that name. But I think that program is just a college and jail program with instructors going in only.
Okay. And if I think it's Manhattan College that is doing that. Is that right, Ed?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So if you wanted to talk to the institution, it would be Manhattan College.
And the jail administrator, the education coordinator at the jail, came to the National Higher Ed and Prison meeting maybe 7 or 8 years ago and is an amazing person. So he offered to be a resource to other New York State jail programming development. I don't know how he would respond, but if you talk to the folks at Manhattan, if you're able to build this kind of thing, they might be able to put you in touch with somebody who could call up your jail. And that, of course, jail people talking to jail people is the best way.
The best way.
Yeah.
But I personally see a lot of value in the inside out model for both my outside students as well as for inside students. So I was looking for ways around this obstacle, but
I've been spending 3 years trying to get Penn State to give the inside students credit for the class without paying for it, and I've made zero headway. So I haven't connected to many people in the inside out listserv and in other like ways of reaching out to local schools in the Philly area to find anyone that's been able to successfully get a bureaucratic institution like a Penn State to give the students credit. So, I mean, the guys taking the class have not really, that's not been a reason to not take it. They're still willing to do it. They want to get the learning. I just think that they should get the credit, and my institution disagrees with me.
Well, let me comment on an institution that's not as bureaucratic as Penn State, smaller, St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, because we have gotten that. It took years. Because the obstacle it's really not financial, because the teachers in the inside out program, it's part of our regular teaching load. So whether they get credit or not doesn't cost any more money. So the issue had to do with clerical problems for the registrar. We had some people, including the former registrar, much respected, who cared about the justice part of this issue. So we informally got some administrators who saw the point that really this is worth doing and this is a trivial reason to not do it. And so we're doing it. They have to do that. In our case, they have to complete the requirements of the course. So we don't have a 1 credit or something like that, but it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, I feel like I've gotten them past the financial part. Right now, our roadblock is this: how do we make them an admitted student to Penn State? Obviously, my inside guys can't apply as a Penn State student. They can't fill out the full application. And so they're not in our Lion Path, online system. So how would they even record the credit or record the grades? And how would they waive admission? So that's the roadblock they're stuck in. And again, that all sounds like clerical BS to me.
It is. They don't record the grade in our case until the course is over and we give the student a grade. It's like the student who's not enrolled at St. Joe's, did not apply at St. Joe's, but took 1 course. We have
It's called a non-matriculating student. That's what we do at Arcadia. They're known as not. In fact, I have inside students and I have community students, formerly incarcerated students, that I have to enroll, and they figure out a way to do it. And it's do you know what system they use? Their backend system is called Banner, and Banner seems to be able to handle, adding people as non-matriculating students.
Now that you just said that, I've advised a student before where it literally said in their thing that they were non-degree. So I guess I'm going to ask them about that.
Yeah, ask them about non-matriculating, and like Betsy said, hi Betsy. Betsy said, Adam, the community students are people out in the community. So they come in and they enroll them on Canvas, just like the Arcadia students. And then if they need to, you can drop them, you know, just like you drop an Arcadia student if they don't make it through. And then I wait till the end to give the information about the Insight students. And then they enroll them as non-matriculating, just like the other guys.
You know, it
And
can be done if people think it's important enough to do it. It's not a big deal.
right, and then I sold it. I
Grants will
pitched
say
it
it is,
as a social justice. It's a, you know, if they're all talking about social justice and diversity and yada yada yada, you know,
That's right. That's what this is.
This is a really, really easy, clear way to show a commitment to social justice and equity and all that stuff that you're not allowed to talk
Dude,
about
thank
anymore.
you for that. That's terrific. I like
Yeah,
that.
and I just wanted to chip in just to say basically the same thing. Vassar, it doesn't really cost them anything. The professor is already being paid. Outside students have paid their tuition. And the college has a category which it uses for a variety of things, a special student. It's a non-matricular, is a special student. Didn't take a lot actually to persuade the college that this is something that they could do. Again, it didn't cost them. And so that's also a piece that was in place. It sounds like the non-matriculated student at another institution. I wanted to say, this reminded me though, to say one more thing, not about, and so what you might want to do is just keep a list of all these places or collect more and take it to Penn State and say, these are institutions which have a status of special students or non-matriculated students. They see it as a non-cost and a social justice issue, an access and diversity initiative.
And Angela, sorry, I want to interrupt for just a minute, Molly, because I think I'm in the same area as Angela. Angela, you're Penn State Brandywine?
Yes, and I feel like a lot of the examples that have been given are private schools so far, and that's the argument
but you know,
that's the argument my school keeps giving me is you can't compare us to some private institution.
We gotta find somebody.
So I'm trying to find public ones that have done that.
Can I jump in as well?
Right. They exist. We'll have to find them. Okay.
Yes, please
But
jump
yeah,
in.
okay. Thank you.
Can I
Pardon me,
jump in as
Molly. I
well?
apologize. Thank you.
This is Shoshana. So I'm at a private school when you mentioned the difference of private versus public schools, but I'm in a private school. But and we, like many schools, have like summer bridge programs where students enroll and they're not necessarily fully enrolled in the course, so they can kind of maybe figure out what that title's for those students. But we have non-degree seeking students, and they can take up to 3 credits that when they're not fully enrolled. And the other thing is that we tell the students most want to take it for credits, but on the back end, when it comes down to it, and I've taught the course often in the community or in a jail, the students don't end up coming back. Like, so it's a pending credit, right? So when they're complete the class, I have the grade there, but often many don't end up getting the grade or completing the assignment. So it's there. And I've only had 2 students come back and actually get the credit out of teaching 5 courses, unfortunately. But they come take the course, they engage as if they're going to come get the credit, but on the back end, they don't end up getting the credit just because they just don't continue or whatever it might be. The other thing I wanted to mention is once I have those 10 students for the outside students, we've met the quota for finding the number for paying for the class. So that's like, find out what the minimum is to get a full class. And once you get that minimum where it's 10 or 12 or 15 from your traditional students, then you can add any of the non-traditional students. And that number might be a sweet number, whatever that number is. And that might be a way to talk to your institution. What is that sweet spot number? Once I reach that, I can get as many on the outside, as many inside students, and it might be okay. So that's something to think about.
Shoshana, let me ask you a clarifying question. So to go back to the thing you were talking about before, are you talking about retroactive credit?
Yeah, so it's lingering, it's there, they have it if they want it. Once they're released, right? Or they come out and they can come back to the institution. It's like a lingering transcript. That's not really there, but they're in contact with me. If they want it, it's there.
Okay.
So,
some people refer to that as retroactive credit. So that's not really giving them the credit at the end of the semester, correct?
Correct. It's not. They have to come back to me and they will get it.
Okay.
So it's not, but the thing is not many have come back, unfortunately, to get it, but it's there and they're motivated why they're in the class because they know they can get the credit. they're getting there, it's there. But again, it's after the class is over, they can come back. And then the registrar knows that these are the 10 students in my class that were on the inside. And if any of them come, they would get the 4 credits for a non-degree seeking student at the university.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, we can continue for a couple of minutes if people want. I think I'm going to have to explain this more clearly to people in the future, these Zooms, because we take the first 10 to 15 minutes with introductions, which I think are very important. And then to give a full hour to the conversation then makes it more like 4 to 5:15. But if people want to continue for a little bit, let's do that.
I can add, I'm at a public institution, and this spring is the first time that we offered credit for the inside students. And I'm saying that, and as we're talking, I emailed my contact in continuing studies to ask what the status of the credit was, because A, we had to go through continuing studies. B, it had to be done. They couldn't obviously do it online. And you know, they're non-matriculating students, they're non-degree students. It's just 3 credits. They get a Bridgewater transcript, so they do get the credit, but they have to apply. I had to get all the information. They had to print it at Plymouth County. I had to physically bring it to continuing studies so the person there could manually register them. So, Lori, to your point, it's probably retroactive because the semester is over and is not official yet. But I mean, that is a way around it. And Angela, you know, I very much am at a public state college school. So, you know, if you want me to talk to your people at Penn State, I'm certainly willing to do that. And yeah, I mean, there is a model for public schools. You know, it can happen.
Yeah, some bureaucrat along the way said something about you might only be able to do this through continuing ed. And so that's the only path I haven't pursued yet, mostly because I don't totally know what continuing ed means.
Yeah, I'm at a private as well, but I work closely with colleagues at a local community college to do exactly this. And what we discovered is in New York State, it's statute that the community college must generate revenue for every credit they issue. But there's a million categories of special programs in which they go around that statute. And so the key is to get your students inside reclassified as whatever the name is that enables the community college to put a freshman English class in a local high school or whatever it may be where they're waiving that tuition requirement.
Do we have other things that people want to talk about?
I will just chip in. I noticed that Erin had, this is flipping it from colleges or universities supporting people going in and giving credit to the incarcerated students. Some facilities, some jails will say, but we don't know, we can't supply materials to the students. How are you going to provide, how are they going to get books? How are they going to get notebooks? How are they going to get pencils? One of the things, Erin has just posted a link here that talks about using the, I don't know the other states. New York State has a statute that says that profits from, or the commissions that come to the jail from commissary sales must be used for programming or things that are to the benefit of those incarcerated in the jail. Needless to say, many jails have what we would not regard as an acceptable attitude towards what's to the benefit of those who are incarcerated, new locks on the doors or whatever. But one can really press with that in jails in New York to say, these funds are by statute funds that the program that we are bringing in should have access to. That is, that their intent was to support the activities that we are bringing into the facility. And so I just wanted everybody to know about that, to check with your state to see if there is such a stipulation about the profits or the commissions that the jail gets from commissary. It apparently is not unique to New York State. I do know that. That's all. I just wanted to call that flip it and talk about the financial pushback that one sometimes gets from the facilities themselves.
Would that have been maybe called the Inmate General Welfare Fund, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's in a lot of places, yeah.
Yeah, that's what, but I didn't, it was in fact Mary Katzenstein that called it to my attention that we were speaking of sooner because the Cornell had been using it, but it also needed to, it didn't come easily. That is, it required some pushing, but yes, that's exactly it, Lori, thank you.
Lynn, you had your hand up.
I did, thank you. And mine was a little off topic, so I'm going to put it in here at the very end, if I may. I think I'm trying to find, it's been fascinating. I'm years out of touch with your program, Lori, and I may need to connect with someone separately about whether it's possible to do some kind of workshop via a medical school education. We are private. I've been asked to report back to my faculty on this at our next meeting. They're interested. And I'm maybe the parameters of what they brought me because I teach interviewing techniques and trauma sensitivity, especially with women, and thinking that might be something that we could do together in an inside out environment that would be, I'm listening, even helpful here, like maybe working something that's an hour credit. I think the undergraduate college at USC already has some professors and faculty working with this, so they've approved it for credit. The medical school will be separate and different. Is there someone comes to mind that you would suggest I reach out to? And Lori, that may be you, or you may know right now, no, we've discussed this and it doesn't work with any kind of graduate programs. What do you think?
It will work. There are one or two places that have already kind of gone down that road. So if you just send me an email, I can connect you up.
Thank you very much.
Any last thing? Oh, yep, Jennifer.
Yeah, I'm sorry to sneak this in at the very end, but I'm wondering if people can comment, particularly those who are in public institutions or in privates, about how you came to convince administrators at your institutions to support faculty who want to do inside out. And part of this has to do within the state of the higher ed institution in Massachusetts, we're contract labor, right? We have a contract, and within that contract, we're required to teach what's called the 4-4 load, 4 classes every semester, for an entire academic year. And one of the initiatives I'm trying to get support for is to reduce the teaching load for inside out faculty so that we can, bring outside students into what will amount to a jail environment, which we have full support, by the way, from that facility. But we're getting a lot of pushback from our administrators about, release time that defies the, contract. We have a very kind of draconian administration right now. And so I'm wondering if folks have any suggestions that you might be able to give me to convince these people to get behind the rhetoric about social justice and diversity and all the rest. So, and it's a giant question, and maybe I can reach out to those who have been successful in their endeavor after the end of the Zoom too. So, yeah.
I can connect you with people at a fancy R1 who've been able to teach on load behind the walls, but I don't know of anyone in less prestigious settings or less rich settings who have been able to negotiate with administration to be able to put prison teaching of any kind, whether inside out or just with incarcerated students, as a reduction in their teaching load on campus.
And my institution is very interested right now in looking for other sources of students. So that, as a matter of fact, is sort of, getting us out there, getting our name out there is very attractive to them. So, but it doesn't directly answer your point, Jennifer, at all.
It's complicated. It really is. So and it's been a battle, almost a 2-year battle with them. So, I'm not sure about Framingham. Is it Framingham or Bridgewater? I mean, we're in the same system, and any ideas from you folks about that, or
I haven't been able to get any
experiences?
sort of course release. I mean, yeah, the 4.4, I'd like to get a course release, even some sort of partial acknowledgement of the labor involved in, advertising, interviewing, and then just the work each day that we meet at the institution. I mean, I would like some sort of, course reduction or some sort of acknowledgement. I haven't been able to do that. I think one workaround was, and this was pre-COVID, having, if the course is adopted by your institution, having it already coded as a service learning course, and then you can, depending on the institution, you can accumulate credit. I know for us in Massachusetts with our contract, you could accumulate 1 credit per course with a service learning course. So you could accumulate, it would take some years to accumulate course release. But I mean, that was kind of burdensome, applying for that every year, and you're not guaranteed. And it's like, I'm teaching the course anyway. But yeah, there should be something. And, we're going through contract negotiations right now, and that's so far down on the list that I don't want to have more work to do what I know I'm going to do anyway. I mean,
Yeah, I'm laughing, but I'm not. I get it.
I understand.
Yeah.
So Stephen, are you saying you add that to your 4.4 load?
No, it's part of the 4.4 load, but
It
all the work to get the course up and running, and then going to the institution, doing the debrief, doing like all of that stuff it's not acknowledged, and there's nowhere in a contract to acknowledge it. A workaround was applying for a service learning, but then you get pushed back on, well, is this actually a service learning course? Like,
got it.
well, technically not. So then maybe you can, massage the wording so it's, it's an experiential type learning. But then, there's a whole bunch of other labor involved in getting that language in the contract. So, I mean, it comes to a point where, it's not really worth it. But if it, to Jennifer, to your question, if that could be done, I would also like to hear from someone who's able to get that done.
Well, if I'm successful, I'm happy to share how that battle got at least temporarily won. I mean, that's the argument I'm making now. And I worked at private schools before, and the public, at least in our state, our lovely Commonwealth, teaching 4 classes per semester, it's a lot of work, right? And then you can do an inside out as one of your 4 classes, but yeah, as you mentioned, there are layers to inside out that are not present always with a conventional, campus course. So yeah, so I'll keep you posted. Right.
I wonder if this might be one of those places where you could do different things, not more things, right? That we know that the real learning that happens with inside out for our students, both inside and outside, happens in the relationships. And so if you're doing more with the relationships and counting on the student learning outcomes to arise more from those than from whatever their other products for your class are, then you might have less grading to do.